The morning shows on Connemara Community Radio. Up-to-date topical interviews. Lively chat and music.
Well, now with me on the line, I should have Kenn Joyce, spokesperson with Alienated Children First. Kenn, you're very, very welcome.
Thank you, Mary. Good morning to you.
And a very good morning to you. How is it in your part of the world?
It is beautiful, as always.
Oh, that's good. That's good. It's a little bit overcast here, but
they say every day is a good day, and
well,
if you don't believe that, just try and miss one of them.
Exactly. Every day you wake up is a good one. Okay. Now I have to be completely honest here. And before this morning, I had not heard of Alienated Children First. Can you give us a little bit of background on it?
Sure. Well, we were established a couple of years ago by a group of parents who are the parents of alienated children, and that means that one of the children's parents has decided, without any reason, to make it impossible for that child to see their other parent. And we found that whilst all the legislation was in place to stop this kind of thing, there was insufficient knowledge within the court system to actually do anything about it, and nothing was being done, and children were being abused in this way all over Ireland, simply because people don't understand what parental alienation is, and we determined to do something about it.
It's a very, very, very sad, difficult situation, really, isn't it?
It's terrible, Mary, and it is. It's a situation where, unfortunately, the mother or the father decides, well, I'm going to get my ex back by hurting them and making sure they don't get to see their children. And of course, it does have that effect. But the real victims are the children themselves, who grow up inexplicably hating their mother or their father, not knowing why. And unfortunately, when they come into adulthood, those children are unprepared for the world, in as much as they're incapable of having normal emotional relations with people. They find it very difficult to trust people they love. As with any form of child abuse, when somebody that you intrinsically love by birthright, such as a parent, abuses you, it has a long-lasting effect. You find it very difficult to trust anybody from that point on, and that stays with you for the rest of your life. And it has all kinds of effects on the economy. And of course, it's not just the father and the child that is abused. Grandparents, uncles, aunties, cousins, they all get victimized by this insidious form of abuse. And we have lots of grandparents that will say, I really don't have any problem with my ex-son-in-law or my ex-daughter-in-law, but they're not allowing me to see my grandkids, and that's bothering me. And is there anything we can do about this? And of course, there is. Grandparents can make applications for custody arrangements in court just the same as parents do, because the European Commission of Human Rights has a charter whereby it says that children, their parents and their grandparents and everybody else, and if anybody stands in the way of that, well, then they are in breach of the law. Now, if you go into a Garda station and you say, I'm a grandparent and my son-in-law or daughter-in-law is in breach of the law because they won't get to see my grandchildren, the Gardaí won't have a clue what you're talking about, and therein lies the rub.
Yeah. Yeah, and since since you came into being, have you had many situations where, like, have people been contacting you saying, this has happened to me and we haven't had the support that we felt we needed?
Thousands of times, and typically what we get is distress at the way the family law courts, which is the last resort for people in this regard, have dealt with the matter. They simply said, "Oh, there's no thing as parental alienation," or "Oh, well, you guys need to work that out among yourselves," or and this is what they're not getting really, and it's where the education is needed, because parental alienation is actually the same effect on the child, according to Dr. Craig Childress and all of the experts internationally that we interview on our monthly podcasts at alienated.ie, or webinars. It has exactly the same effect as any other kind of child abuse, physical, sexual, or whatever it is, in terms of the damage it does to the child. And in fact, we had with an expert coming on our program next week, the 30th of the month at 6 p.m, Karen Woodall, and she has stated that in her work over the years for the courts, where she has been involved in murder trials and rape trials, and looking at the psychology of the people that did these horrendous crimes, and trying to explain them to us. So she's had to have fairly in-depth psychological insight into these people in the individual cases, and obviously she's a qualified psychotherapist and psychologist herself. So, but she has stated that the insidious damage and danger to children from parental alienation is far and above worse. So it gives you some indication as to how serious the damage done is, but it's something that's just not understood, and it's very like the situation we had in Ireland 40 years ago, where parents were going into the Garda station and saying, my child says that the local teacher or priest is behaving inappropriately with them, and social norms have to be maintained, etc. And the church at that time was a very lauded organisation and could do no wrong, so therefore they just pushed it under the carpet, and the priest was sent to another village where nobody knew the priest, and they would do the same thing again. And of course, when parents tried to take it to the Vatican, they covered it up. When it was taken to the Irish law courts, the judiciary here covered it up, because people just didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to handle something like that, and that's where we're at today with parental alienation abuse. They make movies about this in 20 or 30 years' time.
But that's not much use to you now.
Well, it will be of use, because it might help the victims today understand what's actually happened to them. Because if you have a situation where one of your parents is abusing you in this way, the chances are that the other parent is a very loving and caring parent, and not always. I mean, there are legitimate cases, of course, where mother doesn't want the kids to see the mother for quite legitimate reasons, or the ex-wife decides, well, the children are not safe around that man, and there are very, very good reasons, and Garda acknowledge reasons why the child shouldn't. And in those cases, of course, absolutely, then it's definitely not parental alienation. Parental alienation is where a perfectly good, loving and able parent is denied access, or the child is denied access to that parent.
Well, I suppose it's complex in that way for the courts to try to determine what is, if the person has the child's best interests at heart. I can imagine it is very, very complicated, because you're absolutely right. But in the same way, Mary, as it was very complicated if a parent came in and said, well, my little Johnny says that the brother in his school is interfering with them, and the judge then had to ascertain, well, is little Johnny telling the truth? Is it, that was very complicated. When we look back on it, we see,
it's very simple, but at the time that was hugely complicated for people to try and get their heads around and deal with. And parental alienation is just 40 years behind, and it'll be the next epidemic that comes to light, unfortunately, I fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I believe there's a webinar coming up for people like me about that such an organisation existed, and I'd say that would be very, very informative. So you were talking earlier on about, was it Karen Woodall you said, is she the psychotherapist then who will be organising the webinar?
She's our next expert guest on the webinar.
Okay.
And what is particularly fantastic about getting Karen on board is that the way she will be dealing with things is she will be telling us what to do as an alienated parent. So if you are an alienated grandparent or an alienated father who doesn't get to see your kid for whatever reason, she will teach you how to build a path for that child to come back to you, which is her strategy on how to make parental alienation go away. So, and one of the, you asked earlier about the calls we get, another one as well as the failure of family law courts is, what can I do? How do I deal with my kids when they come around screaming and shouting and saying they hate me, and what am I supposed to do? And of course, no point getting into an argument about how, well, but it's not your fault, it's my ex's fault, and he does this or she does that, and they're brainwashing you because the kids don't do that.
No, they don't.
So what Karen will do is give us practical steps that we can all take as alienated grown-ups to help the alienated children circumvent the alienation process and develop a long-term, and it is long-term, unfortunately, there's no quick fix for this, but a long-term path back to the other loving parent, grandparent, aunt, uncle, cousin, whatever it happens to be. And that's on the 30th at 6 p.m.
At 6 p.m.
And tickets are available free of charge to register at alienated.ie.
Okay.
And we also have... next month in April we have our Bubbles for Love Day coming up, which is an international day, so everywhere in the world they celebrate this one day. I believe it's the 25th. You can check the website for that. I don't have my notes in front of me here, but that's where people all over the world send messages of love to the children that they don't see, and or don't see as much as they should, or don't see in any kind of proper way. And we're going to arrange a flash mob for that as well. So details of all of that can be found again at alienated.ie.
Well, do you know something? Even while I was talking to you there now, I was kind of thinking in my own mind, and off the top of my head, I can think who have a child that they're not able to see. So if I can do that, I'm sure everybody knows of children in that situation, where you have parents that are desperate to be able to have contact, but the contact just isn't there.
And do you know why that is? It's because of the historical norms, where Ireland was very much a country where the women stayed at home and took care of the children, and that was their job.
Yeah.
And, but that's gone. That's like, men are just as responsible for taking care of children as women are, as much as women are all out working. Doing what was supposedly a man's job. And the opposite is also true and accepted. So what has happened is society has moved on, but the ever trudging along legal system has not been able to. Its legislation hasn't been kept up to date, which it has, but just the mentality of the people and the understanding of the people within it, by its very nature, they move very cautiously and very slowly, and that just needs a bit of a catch-up. And I have to say, hats off to Minister Mary Mackey, with whom we work. She realises that the family law system is not fit for purpose, is not working, is a broken system. She realises how many parents there are out there who love their kids and aren't able to see them, and the harm that does to the children. she realises how grossly unfair it all is and how impossible it is to find anything close to justice in a situation where whoever has the most money to spend on lawyers is the one who wins, typically speaking. So there are movements within the highest levels of the country to do something about this. In fact, the Minister actually put out to tender last year a research document to be done on parental alienation specifically, and internationally she requested information as to how it was being dealt with. And that report was delivered to the Minister in November last year, and when it is published, she will be asking for public consultation on that, and we would welcome everybody to give their tuppence worth there. Your 5 friends can be top of the list, Mary.
Okay. Well, listen, we're very, very grateful to you, Ken, for coming on, and I will give out the details of that again at the end of the programme.
Effort here, Mary. I'm just the unfortunate Egypt that gets to go on the radio and tell people about it. There's a whole team of people here who work tirelessly in various different capacities to make this happen, and to try and help our kids.
Well, they selected a good Egypt. Listen,
we're too kind.
Take care of yourself, Ken.
Many thanks, Mary.
Not at all.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye. So there you heard Kenn Joyce, and I'll give out the details of that again at the end of the programme. But first we're going to go with a piece of music, and this is one from the Everly Brothers.